Hey, chillins, I'm back and I'm on fire. So this is gonna have to be a multi-part one, so I'm just warning you that up front because I just had an hour conversation with a friend of mine who is one of the biggest proponents of streaming, of Spotify, in the music business. He's extremely successful. He's a great dude. I don't want to hear any crap about my buddy Dave. Dave's true blue. I don't always agree with him. I know a lot of people might have issues with him about this. I don't know. But I'm open-minded. Yes, I'm an old dude, but I'm open-minded. He's an old dude, but he knows what he's talking about. He runs 30 Tigers here in Nashville. He and I produced the Song of America in 2007, the 3 CD set that was very successful. Couldn't have done it without Dave. Not going to say bad things about Dave, because I like the guy. Anyway, he and I had an hour-long conversation about all this stuff. Now, Dave has a letter up on Bob Leffitz's page. He was asked to contribute something to Rolling Stone about Spotify. Of course, Rolling Stone didn't print the whole thing, so they cherry-picked. So it probably made things seem worse, or at least from what he was saying, than it was, or made him look bad. I don't know. I don't read it. I don't read Rolling Stone. It's a piece of crap. So he took the whole thing that he actually wrote to the Rolling Stone writer, and it was printed on Bob Leffitz's page. So Bob Leffitz put it up there. There's a lot of comments. You can read about it. I'll link to it. It'll be easier for me to link on my YouTube page than my other social media, but I'll try. It's important to read because Dave does make some good points. There's a guy who trolls me here constantly on TikTok, on YouTube. He seems to follow me around whenever I say anything about Spotify, and he's reading from this clearly. It's like, doesn't have an original thought in his head. It's all coming from Dave. So, like I said, Dave and I had this long conversation, so let's get to it. The basic gist of what Dave is getting at is that the industry was a $15 billion industry and then became a $7 billion industry in 2014. So it was like $15 billion in the 90s and then went down to $7 billion. And his contention is that Spotify brought it back to be a $14 billion industry. That may be true, but not everybody's getting paid. And here's why. I'll get to that in a second. My contention is, okay, no doubt the streaming revenue from Spotify and other streaming sources have brought it back up to 14 billion, but not everybody's getting paid. So it's an artist-driven platform, meaning the artists get a bigger chunk than the writers do. In fact, my buddy Uninvited Band here, he knows all about this. So you would get like 9 cents a song on a record if you were the writer back in the day. You're not getting anywhere near close to that. Of course, you can't, it's not apples to oranges. But let's say you do apples to oranges of spins, of streams to terrestrial airplay. The writers are still getting screwed in this platform, and no one is arguing that. Dave's not arguing that. That's a fact, okay? The writers are getting screwed, which is one of the reasons I was calling for regulation on Spotify. If Spotify is making more than 8% a year in revenues, then just like the insurance industry or any other industry, they should be regulated. We'll get to that later on down the line. But writers are getting screwed. They're getting a much less of a proportional adjustment for the equal amount of plays if you calculate that and make apples and oranges the same, okay? So that is indisputable that the writers are getting screwed. It's an artist-driven platform. That's number one. If you're a writer who's also an artist, cool, you're getting paid. But if you're a writer and you're not getting the spins as an artist, you're in deep doo-doo. So that's number one. Number two Dave is all about the democratization of streaming. So am I. I have no problem with the fact that you don't have to go to a gatekeeper to get signed to a record deal. You can just make an album or make a song, make a track, and put it up and get it on Spotify, put it on TuneCore, put it on whatever you want, and start working it. That is the best part of this whole equation. The downside is, and Dave admits this in his paper, that then there's 1,000 more times harder to get through, because instead of having 100,000 artists, there's 10 million artists putting out music all the time. So it's much harder to cut through. It's much harder to get a toehold. It's much harder to get noticed. So that is an issue. Furthermore, it's a youth-driven platform, meaning that someone like myself are not going to get the spins that a Drake or forget about Drake because he's big, but anybody young. So Dave's argument is that anybody younger is going to have a much easier time on this platform. Why? Because they have much more disposable time, because they did a study on this, and that, older people over 35 are listening to much less Spotify than people under 35. So if you're a younger artist and you're appealing to your age group, those people you're going to have a much easier time of getting them to listen, thus getting more spins. They did the numbers. It's a fact. So younger platform, democratization, it's harder to get through than it was before. There's much more competition. And in Dave's letter, which I really recommend you read this, he's like, well, does that mean that, every artist should be allowed to make a living? And his answer is, well, in a capitalistic society, no. I have more on that later. Anyway, this will be the end of part one. I'm already way over the time that I wanted to do for part one, but there's a lot more here, so hang on, kids. Hang on.